Wicked. Awesome.
Yeah.
So Tony, thanks for your time jumping on. Yep, we're recording. Great. So this call is, I said to Tony the other day, have you ever done a call for people who are more business minded, avid investors, have a really like substantial investment portfolio and want to learn more about crypto assets and where we're heading down this path? And he said, no, he hadn't, but let's do one. So here we are. And I know we do have a bunch of accountants. We've got people interested in using their superannuation retirement fund to purchase crypto assets. So I think most people here, and if you haven't, we can get you some further information. But Tony, I'm going to ask that we assume most people here have watched an overview. They know about the ecosystem on a vague level. They've potentially seen you speak and do an overview on R-Link. So I'm going to dive a little deeper for the sake of this call. And I've got some questions written down that I'm being asked quite often by this type of person. So sure. I'm wondering if we can go in and answer some of these. So first and foremost, for those of us that know you quite well over the last 12 months, I mean, you're one of my most influential people to listen to, because I maintain the theory of be around people who have done what you aspire to do. So I'm wondering if, and I know it's a weird space, if you could give a bit of background on why it's like, from an investment business point of view, you've had a lot of success. Why do you believe blockchain nodes this type of crypto asset when we have so many things we could put our money into? Why do you believe this is a really powerful space?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm certainly diversified in my holdings, as far as just my investments. My biggest returns historically have always come from my own companies. I'm an entrepreneur. And so I think everybody's got their own skill sets, their own portfolios, and their own risk tolerance, right? And, I think probably my favorite passive investment's oil wells, so that's a good one that just keeps on sending checks every single month. I have real estate, do some development, got a lot of stocks, bonds, treasuries, you name it, cryptocurrencies, lots of different cryptos. And so for me, I stay pretty diverse in my holdings. I look at kind of my high risk portfolio, but I'm more and more bullish kind of by the day on the node software for R-Link and utilizing that as a big piece of my portfolio, because it for me, I look at where Web3 is going, and we talk about this in a lot of my overviews and presentations, but I really do believe we're kind of at that precipice where if we went back to the mid-90s where Web 2 was, and really that was the transition from what I would call Web 1 into Web 2, basically going from the military using the internet and a few large companies like Apple and IBM using the internet, to all of a sudden I was sending an email to my mom through Hotmail. And then I was paying my credit card bill online thinking, I'm never going to mail another check again for the rest of my life. Like, the internet, obviously it allows us to communicate. It allows us to share information real time all over the world. It closes the distance gap. And what blockchain and Web3 will do is I truly believe that technology will free the internet and free up the data that is being controlled by a few large corporations, and it will give that data back to us, the users, and we'll control our own data. And again, as a human being, I think if we were given a choice, you can own your own data, determine where it goes, if it goes, and if there is money that's paid for it, you're the one that earns it. Or we can stick with the status quo, which is, Mark Zuckerberg has been listening to me already this whole time, Jeff Bezos, Sergey Brin at Google. And I always say I don't mind targeted advertising. I'd rather get ads for watches and pickleball paddles than dresses and high heels. What I do mind, and maybe most of us do, is the fact that Zuckerberg's going to make an extra, $40 billion off of all of our data, all of our networks, all of our content. And what Web3 is going to do, it's going to take that control out of their hands. Because if we're given a choice, I believe every human is going to choose to control and own their own data, and to have that trust and transparency that blockchain technology will bestow to the user. And so I say, as a traditional investor, if you look at the market cap of all of crypto, all blockchain projects on planet Earth combined, you're in the $3.2 to $3.5 trillion market cap, which is substantial, but that is similar to the market cap of Apple computers, the iPhone, and not to belittle Apple, but if you have a technology that in essence could make everybody on planet Earth bankable, and if you imagine every village everywhere in the world, in Africa, India, from the outback of Australia, with blockchain networks, you would have everyone being able to participate in the world's financial systems. And I think a lot of us probably on a meeting like this take for granted the amount of opportunity that would be lost if we weren't able to participate in the financial systems of the world. But there's a huge portion of the global population that couldn't open a bank account. And so blockchain solves that problem globally. If you'd imagine a technology that could end voter fraud overnight. And for the United States, like if you Google blockchain voting patent, the United States Postal Service has had that patent for 5 years now. And while ending voter fraud in Australia or the United States would be nice, ending voter fraud in countries like Venezuela, many countries in Africa, maybe countries like Russia, it would prevent elections from being stolen forever. And that technology, which is blockchain, imagine ending voter fraud. Imagine making everyone on the planet bankable. Imagine owning all of our health data, all of our DNA data, being able to share it through a blockchain anonymously, utilizing AI to aggregate said data, and putting an end to rare diseases on the planet, putting an end to misdiagnosis. I know in the United States, one of the leading causes of death is incorrect prescriptions or incorrect mixing of prescriptions. Maybe a cardiologist issued a prescription for one pill, and then 3 months later, an oncologist issued another prescription for a different medication, but those two don't go well together. And that happens to people. AI doesn't forget those kinds of prescriptions. It knows, it remembers. And so a technology that could end misdiagnosis, end incorrect prescriptions, end rare diseases, end voter fraud, make everybody on the planet bankable, that is way more valuable than an iPhone. And I apologize to the Apple users that love it. It's way more valuable than a Mac computer. And so when I think about the ability to position ourselves at the forefront of that technology, I think it's a massive opportunity that I always say this is not a once in a lifetime thing. If we're correct, and that's the question, right? Like I have no crystal ball. That's why I tell people this is for the high risk part of a portfolio, but some people are more risk tolerant than others. But if not just me and not just Ange and not just the community at Connect, but people like Elon Musk, there's a lot of people around the world that are a lot smarter than I am that are talking about this blockchain and this Web3 revolution. And if they're all right about this, this is not a once in a lifetime shift. This is a once shift. Back in 2021, this is where the World Economic Forum said blockchain will disrupt up to $867 trillion in traditional markets. I've heard as recently as like 6 months ago, it could be as high as 1.3 quadrillion disruption. So again, that is not something that's ever happened in history, in human history. There's never been that kind of economic disruption in any marketplace in history of the world. And I doubt there will be that kind of disruption in the future as well. Maybe cross-planetary, you would see if an economy was moving from massive countries in the US into Mars or whatever, as we, colonize other planets, you could potentially see that kind of shift or a larger shift. But again, I don't know if our kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, double greats, triple greats will be a part of that kind of shift. And so I felt like if I had a time machine and we could all go back into the mid-90s, Australia is a long way away, especially from me here in Puerto Rico. But I would tell all of us, if we had a time machine and we went back into the early 90s, mid-90s, I would say, listen, wherever we're all at right now, let's all go to Silicon Valley out in California. And let's go find Google, Sergey Brin. Let's go find Jeff Bezos with Amazon. Let's find Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. Let's find the PayPal guys. Let's find Zuckerberg in 2007. But in the early to mid 90s, knowing what we know now, we could just go and pick winners left and right. And certainly those winners would be what we refer to as internet companies. Oh yeah, Google, they're an internet company. PayPal, it's an internet company. Amazon, it's an internet company. And now no one says that. Nobody says internet company. My accounting firm, you cannot bring me your payroll. You cannot mail me your 941Xs. You can't send me tax documents. You can load them in our secure repository online. Like, our accounting firm is an internet company. Like, you don't even say it. If you're not on the internet, you're probably not a very big company. And so all companies are pretty much internet companies nowadays. I currently talk about projects like this as a blockchain project. I work in the blockchain space. I'm working with blockchain companies. Those days are numbered. Like, here in the very near future, I won't need to say I'm working on a blockchain project. All projects, for the most part, will be blockchain projects. And so it'll be redundant to say it. I'll just say I'm working on a project. The world will know it deals in the blockchain, or it wouldn't be that big of a project if it didn't. And so as we look at the market cap of all of cryptocurrency and we say, okay, it's near what Apple is, but it should be 10 times that, 50 times that, 100 times that. It should be much larger than Apple is, with just the applications of the technology in play. How do we get those applications into the hands of the masses? And I think the nerds, and I say that lovingly, have gotten blockchain to where it's at today, which is fairly complex. Setting up a MetaMask wallet, bridging tokens to ERC20, having your 12 seed phrase, sending a transaction, receiving transactions. It's not that simple to do. It's not user friendly, so to speak. Neither was the internet. Prior to Hotmail, nobody used email other than some high-tech individuals, the military. It wasn't a great user interface. It wasn't easy to code. Now, people send emails from their phones. Like, it's the entrepreneurs made the internet, in essence, the code, HTML, HTTP, what SSL certificates are. They made that code invisible. My mom doesn't know any of that code or what it means, but she can watch her shows on Netflix. She can pay her credit card bill off, check her bank statement, get on a conversation like this with us if she wants to. She's using the internet to make her life easier, more entertaining, more efficient, because entrepreneurs figured out, how do we take this very complex technology that allows the world to send information real time all over, and how do we create this user experience where everyone can participate and not need to be a coder or some kind of internet genius? And they did it. The entrepreneurs did it. The people in Silicon Valley really started that party. And so if we could go back and be a part of their companies as they were expanding into that Web 2 environment, obviously all of us would be in different places than we are now financially. Even those of us that have had a lot of success, we would have much, much more success if we could go back to the mid 90s and swing through, the Silicon Valley in California. Now, in blockchain, I truly believe that the entrepreneurs are now up to bat. Using a baseball or softball analogy, we're up to the plate, and it's our turn to figure out how do we make this complex technology, which is blockchain, and make it usable for the masses. And how do we allow people to participate in that potential upside? And if you look at that upside, if these people are right, it will be the biggest transition in wealth in human history. And so the node software that we operate is very simple to operate. You don't have to be a computer engineer. You don't have to really understand coding or anything like that. It's, for lack of a better term, it's like a friendly virus that you put on your computer, and you let a company, a blockchain company, borrow your computer power. And by doing that, you earn rewards, which is no different than what Bitcoin did. They said, hey, let us borrow your computer power to operate the Bitcoin blockchain network. And if you plugged your Bitcoin miner into the wall and ran it, and it did a transaction, was the first confirmation of a transaction, you would receive what's called a transaction reward, a transaction fee. If you were the last transaction on what's called a block, you would also earn what's called a block reward if you did that. So that's called proof of work. And out of all the, I'd say, top 500 cryptocurrencies in the world, there's only 2 that I know of that had no investors and have never done an ICO. Bitcoin is one, Gala Games is the other. I would call it what I would call a fair launch, meaning any tokens I have, there's 2 ways I got them. I earned them through mining. My node software was turned on, and I got rewarded because if my software is turned on 6 hours or more a day, I share evenly with that day's distribution of all other node owners. The other way I've earned tokens is doing meetings like this, bringing people into the community who bought nodes, bringing people into the community who bought NFTs and signed up for the system and the service. That's the only way I've gotten tokens. There was no ICO. It's not like I just, I'm going to give myself 1 billion tokens out of thin air. I have hard costs to that mining equipment. And so even though it's software-based mining, I have a lot of nodes that I paid a lot of money for. And so for me, it's almost like I have to work this project where I believe Web3 and blockchain is going, which is real companies, real utility. The meme coins, I believe their days are numbered. They're gonna be fine now during this bull run, I believe. But I think by the next bull run, the meme coins will be looked upon. In the United States, we call them penny stocks. I'm sure you probably have something similar or have penny stocks in Australia, but nobody really talks about penny stocks. Like, it's just kind of a fringe group that'll deal off and on with penny stocks. People talk about, in the US, we call them blue chippers, blue chip stocks, which would be Apple, Amazon, Lockheed Martin, Tesla, big, massive, huge global corporations, Shell, ExxonMobil. Like, everybody knows these big companies. That's the market. That's what we look at when we say traditional markets. When we talk about blockchain markets now, we're for the most part talking about Bitcoin and meme coins, just crap coins. And I truly believe those days of talking about meme coins are coming to an end. And more real companies and real projects are going to be utilizing Web3 and blockchain. And so the easiest way to participate for me, if you can handle it financially, is to run node software. Now, if you can't, the easiest way would be to build the community, and help bring in users. But that takes work. You've got to talk to people. You've got to get the word out. You got to do what somebody like Ange does, and tell people about what you're working on. But to run a node, my buddy that ran about $250,000 worth of Gallon nodes made over $40 million. He never recruited anybody into that community, did nothing other than run nodes. That was it. And so it is something for an individual who's passive and just says, hey, let's see what happens. Let's roll the dice. It's no different than my oil wells. Like, I don't know the first thing about drilling a well and what it would take and whether I would be drilling in the place that would actually strike oil. So I have friends of mine that are generational oil guys and gals, and they know where to find oil, and they have deals that come up and they let me know, and I'll invest, and then the checks come in, and it's great. And so there's higher risk oil investing, what I would call exploration, where you're investing in their exploration. They're looking for oil. And if you invest in it and they don't find oil, whatever you invested in that project is gone. It's worthless. You lost all your money that you put in that project. If you invest in a project that they strike oil, the upside is very high. This is kind of similar in my opinion of, that passive side investing for a node. The only difference I would say, if you use this platform, and this was the big question for me, I'd used Zoom for years. I was using GoToMeeting. I was using all of it well before the pandemic. Years before the pandemic, I was doing webinars and video conferences. And so when the pandemic hit, and it kind of obviously just took that industry into the stratosphere, I looked at, our ability to grab market share from that video conferencing space, which is a fairly large space. I think Zoom is a $22 to $25 billion market cap. And I felt like here, I actually could move the needle and make an impact. Whereas with oil wells, there's nothing I can do to help my friends strike oil. If they hit a dry well or they strike oil, literally there's nothing. I'm not a geologist. I'm not a petroleum engineer. There's nothing I can do to help them. Here, I can add people onto this platform. And the question from me was, after using Zoom for many, many years, is this good enough for me to leave Zoom and just use this exclusively? Because I build all of my businesses, not just the blockchain side, but all of my businesses, for the most part, are built remote. They're built on meetings like this. And for, over half a year now, I have not been on a Zoom meeting. I use this platform and exclusively this platform. Now, I was looking for good enough, right? Like I needed it to be as good as Zoom. I didn't need much else. It's been far superior to Zoom. And many of you have obviously seen, some of the demos that we do. And if you're watching this recording, right, or if you're on live, when I pull up the plans for our platform, each and every one of you now can scroll through this at your own pace. If you're watching this recording, you can scroll through this at your own pace and just click around, do whatever. If you're watching the recording, this is a live website, whether you're here live with me now, you're each controlling your own screens, your own phones, however it is, or if you're watching the recording on your phone or on your laptop, you can scroll. And so being able to have more bells and whistles, the call to action buttons we talk about. So if it's better than Zoom, and Zoom's a $22 to $25 billion company with 300 million daily users, and you tag in the fact it's cheaper, priced out better, it presents and converts better, and then it also allows us to own and control our data and get rewarded for using it. It's a long answer to a short question, but I think it's important to know why I'm putting so much time, energy, and why I put so much money behind this project. Because if you put me in a time machine and took me to Silicon Valley in the mid-90s, I'd do the exact same thing. I'd put all my time, energy, and effort into the internet boom, with the companies that I knew were going to be winners. And I believe we're in that same type of boom. The only difference is blockchain is growing faster than the internet did in the 90s. And the upside on transition of wealth is 100 to 1,000x what it was in the mid 90s here in that Web3 transition from Web 2.
I think Henry Ford would be really impressed. I was thinking about this yesterday. I'm such a big fan of Napoleon Hill's work. I love how he goes and speaks into entrepreneurial mindset. I was thinking about this before our call, Tony, that when I went back and watched some of my very first videos, Jim Bunch actually posted them in the new social impact thread about explanations on Bitcoin, and then Skippy T put in a cartoon. I was watching them again with my 16-year-old daughter, and I remember something that Napoleon Hill said about Henry Ford was, find a big problem to solve before mass adoption and then help it get the mass adoption. That's the best investment. And when you speak about the dudes over in Silicon Valley, that's their mindset, that's their genius in entrepreneurial. So great segue into, I'm glad you said how much time and money you've put behind this, because I think there's definitely keys in watching a person put all their time and energy into something when they could be making money out of a lot of other things. When I think about Bitcoin, and I went and watched that explanation again, I think it's really important, if you don't have Bitcoin, to go and understand Bitcoin. And I see such a transfer of intelligence in this space, in blockchain, in software nodes, where all the guys back in 2015 crushed at mining Bitcoin. I see a new opportunity for the lay person and the investor to make money over here buying software nodes doing the same thing, getting in at the start of these projects. One of the questions I get asked from people looking to move money into software nodes is, what is the business model of, say, R-Link?
Mm-hmm.
And who are the founders behind this? So where is like the sense of credibility that would support a person making a decision to put money into this space?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but it's also, I think, not as important of a question as maybe people would think. And the reason I say that is, if this was, idea phase, meaning there was no platform and we were on a Zoom talking about the platform we're going to build, it would be very important to know who was behind that platform and who was building it and what their credentials were and what their abilities were. We're not doing that here. I'm looking at it going, listen, if you've used Zoom, use this and compare them. And if this is as good or better than Zoom, and you think if you were converting sales better on this platform than Zoom, and it would cost, for me, $3,400 a year less to use this platform versus Zoom. And it was $3,400 cheaper to use this platform than Zoom. It's almost like if there's a good restaurant that's getting ready to go IPO and somebody says you should buy stock in the restaurant, I never do that, actually. I go eat at the restaurant first. And if I like the restaurant and I enjoy the service level, I'll buy the heck out of that stock. But if I don't, I won't. And it happened with me with Noodles and Company. They were getting ready to IPO. I went in Denver somewhere and I ate at Noodles and Company late. I was in right as they were getting ready to lock the doors, and this was telling for me. They let me in. I had a great meal. The service couldn't have been better. And so I bought their stock and it started to shoot up. And then I went back probably 6 months later, a different location, and the food wasn't that good. The service wasn't that good. And I sold the stock. And it's funny, but not long after that, that stock went down quite a bit. And so maybe lucky that I was hungry for Noodles and Company the second time and ate there and I didn't like it as much. If if it would have been as good as the first time, I would have never sold the stock. And I imagine their stock wouldn't have gone down. I think somehow as they got larger and got bigger, they lost a little bit of the service level that was provided, and maybe even the quality of food that was provided as they got bigger. And so, the idea behind bringing this to the chain was Darren Kidd, who Darren's a marketer, best-selling author, and is somebody that has done a lot of coaching, training. I'll pull up his bio real quick, but he's somebody that found this code and thought it could potentially go on the blockchain space. Our chief marketing officer, he brought Kim Garst in, and she's a Forbes magazine top 10 social media influencer. She's built seven-figure online companies and is our chief marketing officer for this project. And so when Darren brought this to me, I took it to Wright. Wright is somebody that was really the brains behind Gala Games, which was the #1 performing cryptocurrency in the world in 2021. Him and a guy named Eric had basically developed the idea to decentralize the gaming world, and it went very, very well. At their peak in 2021, the market cap for that project was a little over $40 billion. There were days when that market cap was a little higher than Tesla's. I don't think it belonged that high, but if you were holding that coin and wanted to sell it, again, you don't care why the market cap is that high. You would only care that the market cap is that high. It's certainly calmed down. I think, after the crypto winter hit and all cryptos went down, Gala went down a lot, but it's still a $1 to $2 billion market cap. Still a
and I see that Grand Theft Auto and the Rockstar Gaming Company are trying to mimic sort of what Gala did. They've just launched, after years of playing dormant, they've just launched their new Grand Theft Auto 6 game with blockchain crypto technology. And I'm like, wow, isn't that cool that, what Wright and Eric did all those years ago,
Sure.
They're just figuring out to do that now, and we're already ahead of the game. So you've answered for me how nodes as an investment opportunity compared to staking or other passive income options. I wrote a bit of a fun numbers with my daughter and my partner last night. My daughter's collecting cans, and it just so happens that one of our neighbors likes to drink a lot of beer. So we've got a very fluid supply of cans. And while she's at her part-time job earning $16 an hour, she's worked out that he's drinking beer. She can go to the other neighbors, collect beer cans, and she got paid the same as 2 hours worth of work in beer cans. And so what she's been doing, she's only 16, is I've set her up MetaMask, and she went and bought R-Link tokens. And we played around with some numbers. And if I got my maths right, which I checked and double checked them a bunch of times, if she does that over 52 weeks, and just for instance, for shits and giggles, the R-Link token went to 50 cents on the exchange, in Australian dollars, she will have made over 800,000 in those investments. And so my mind, as a mum, as a woman who's made a lot of shitty investments, mistakes, and I'm, backtracking a bit, I'm like, where else could you do that? Even if it fell flat on its face, that's some pretty good hope for humanity for a 16-year-old. I don't know if our kids have the opportunity to, go to school, go to jobs and buy property and get into investing. I don't know if traditional companies are going to be as secure as they were when some of us in our 40s and 50s were investing. I think, it's fair to say it's responsible to consider that Bitcoin, now blockchain with cryptocurrency and a mining aptitude, I think it's fair to say it's responsible mindset. My question that I get asked as well is, in comparison to other investment opportunities, do we need to know the tokenomics and market dynamics? What I mean by that, I was having a conversation with an accountant that's in the superannuation space, and we were talking about How deep an understanding does a node owner really need to understand the tokenomics of the node between the node and the crypto open market where our tokens are worth cash, for instance?
Sure. Yeah, I think it depends on the person, right? And I'll put a link in the chat, and I can feature it real quick. So that's the charter. Like if somebody wants to know the tokenomics, they can get it right there. My degree's in finance and economics, and I got to be honest, I don't think I've ever gotten through a full prospectus of any of the publicly traded companies that I've owned a piece of. It's not that important to me. It's more important that the food is good, right? Like from Noodles and Company, or the food's not so good for me to make my investment decision. Whether I came into Lockheed Martin or Pfizer or any of the big, massive blue chip companies, I probably still am not going to read their prospectus. I don't have a lot of time to deal with other, information on stocks and things like that. So there are other people that will read every prospectus of every company they come into and go through their balance sheet and go through their, quarterlies and are they on pace? Are they ahead of their projections? Are they behind? And certainly that comes into play, but it depends on what your strategy is, right? Like for me, almost anything in the stock market is long-term for me, with a 10 to 20 year horizon. Some of the stuff I'm in is probably a 30-year horizon. And I've been in stock since my sophomore year of high school. So it's been a long time ago, early 90s, actually 93, that would have been. So it's been, quite a few years ago. And that's when I started grabbing stocks. And for the vast majority of them, they're still held, and eventually I can sell some off, when it's retirement time, if I need to. I kind of took care of retirement many times over now with all the different businesses and investments. So, I think, again, knowing the details behind the tokenomics is important. I think the most important thing is the transparency that blockchain provides. And I'll share screen and show this to you guys. And I'll share the page as well and highlight it. But if I go into the Rally blockchain, and again, we're in beta, so you can see the top addresses for the top wallet addresses for the tokens. You can see, a token like this would be probably your communities that would do this many transactions. The community owns a lot of nodes. So the community, meaning all of us, these are our tokens. It's a lot of them, over 2.1 billion, and can use those to do promotions, to pay out. And you can check all the large wallets and all the transactions that have been done. You can look at the charts of the entire blockchain. You can go all time and just see how's the transaction number on chain, how many total blocks, how many addresses, how many wallets, basically over 18,000 wallets. And as we come out of beta, we'll throw all the data for the users on there, anonymously. You won't know who the user is, but you'll see that, hey, there's 18,312 $10 a month users. There's 12,316 $30 a month, and there's 11,242 $50 a month right now. So you'll see how many NFTs were purchased. Like everything will be on chain here. And so like I can send these stats. I'll stop my sharing and I'll put this in. But that's the beauty of blockchain. Full transparency, full ownership. Someone was asking, if Zoom being updated would constitute a threat to R-Link. Zoom, there's nothing proprietary about our bells and whistles. Zoom could program it in, sure. And they do things that we don't do yet, like the AI note-taking summarization. We're building all that because we like it, and there's nothing proprietary about that. So we'll just use it because it's good. It's a good tool to have in your arsenal. The one thing they'll never do is allow the users to own their data, and they can't reward people with a decentralized currency, a cryptocurrency, as the reward, because companies like IBM utilize their what we'd call centralized blockchains. IBM uses blockchain technology to track some of their supply chain for sure. But they don't, and the tokens are all internal to determine what's going on in their shipping lanes and is everything moving according to plan. And they don't have an external value and would never have an external value that great, other than, what maybe you would see with like airline miles or Amex points. And that's the big difference between a decentralized network. And that's what this is. I have no ownership. I'm just a community member. I have a lot of nodes and I've brought in a pretty big community, but that's it. My nodes are no different than somebody's nodes who buys today. They paid more because I bought all mine for $2,500 when it started. And today, I think the nodes are $5,900 now. As more nodes sell, the price goes up. But
can we talk a little bit about that, Tony? Can we talk a little bit about, let's go over to R-Link as a business on the blockchain. So you've showed us about the Rally blockchain side of things, but let's talk about R-Link. So when someone buys a node for $5,900 US, can you talk a little bit about, for those that don't understand blockchain projects, businesses where does that money go? How are we generating revenue? How does that revenue impact the node owner's opportunity?
So right now, about half goes into the project and half goes through the node rewards distribution, what we call the win distributor. And so if you brought that purchaser of that node, it's going to reward you with what's called a transaction reward. And if you brought me in and I bought, you would get a transaction reward. If I brought in my sister and she bought a node, I would get a transaction reward. You would get what's called a confirmation reward. And so that's all an algorithm that's paid out through the blockchain that the community voted on. The community determined that's how it would pay out. The community is the one that voted and said, hey, half of the money will go to the project to run. Half of the money will go into the distribution side. Now, as we scale this project up, right now it does cost, if I have a $10 customer, it costs us around $5 to operate. At a $50 customer, it costs us around $25 to operate. Now at scale, beta is a lot more pricey when you're in a SaaS model for sure. At scale, we'll be able to operate on a $10 client, it'll cost about $1. A $30 client will cost about $2 to $3, and a $50 client will cost about $4 to $5. And as we really scale up, it's probably going to be closer to $1 for a client, no matter what level they're at. And as our devs and like our chief marketing officer and our CEO, a lot of these people that work with us, the community pays them with tokens. They don't want dollars. So as more of our employees take tokens, the margins get even better. And then it'll cost us literally nothing to run a customer, because the community nodes are mining tokens that then the tokens are given to the CEO, the CMO, the developers, the project leads and managers. And if they're accepting, magic internet money, that's where Zoom's going to have a huge problem with us. Very difficult to compete. Imagine you own Zoom and all of your employees, you have to pay them with Australian dollars or US dollars or yen or euros, depending on where they're at in the world. And we're paying all of our employees with magic internet money. And so it's very difficult to compete with a company that has 100% margin, because it's never been done before. But that's where we're heading. And that's the biggest lift, is really to fully decentralize operations. And we've figured it out. Like we're certainly, I don't know if we'll be the Googles or Amazons of Web3, but there's nobody ahead of us right now. And I don't know anybody even close. And so we're pretty excited about where we sit right now in the Web3 environment.
Mm-hmm. And talk to me a little bit about revenue. And you know, like I look today, Bitcoin's up over $100,000. It's been that way for over a week now. It's pretty exciting. The Bitcoin crew are going nuts. And we know that Bitcoin leads the way in the crypto world. But like nothing other than consensus buying and selling changes the economics there, as far as I'm aware, on a base level. My understanding with R-Link, though, is like you said, we can move the needle as a community. We can influence the price. And when we talk about things like, you know, I was dreaming with my daughter saying, you know, if it goes to 20 cents, if it goes to 50 cents, what if it goes to $1 a token? I know that what I'm learning in this space is that, you know, by bringing people to the company R-Link and having them sign up on a $10 a month subscription and use this as opposed to Teams or Google Meet or Zoom, that we can move the needle. Can you talk a little bit about, like, that's a big deal for me. When that dropped, I was like, this feels like a really good idea. If we can create buy-side pressure, I've heard you call it, by creating revenue, by using real world utility, by using a real world service.
Yeah, I think that's where Web3 has a huge advantage over Web2. And as we come out of beta, the community has voted that 100% of the revenue from the user base is going to go in to buy the token, right into the open market. And I know Peter asked this question. Our planned soft launch, we're doing an event in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, June 19th through the 22nd. And that's kind of the planned launch date to really, you know, start to bring in customers that are not part of our community, just outside customers that are swiping their credit card, setting up their accounts and running their R-Link meetings. And when you can drive revenue through your project, it's never really ever been done in the cryptocurrency and blockchain space. Now, I think it's where the space is going, real companies using this technology and allowing decentralized ownership of that technology. And I look at it and go, okay, again, I can move the needle in that space. I can add users here. And if every dollar in revenue ends up going into the market to buy the token, that puts a lot of what I would call buy-side pressure on that token. And if there's not enough sellers at that particular price, well, the price goes up and it'll go up until it's hit. And so the user doesn't care. I don't know if that makes sense, but like when I buy and sell Bitcoin, I care about the price. And I'm long on Bitcoin. I think it's going to go up to $1 million or more, but I care about what the price is. But if I pay $10 on my credit card to get this software for a month, and to do that, you have to go buy $10 worth of tokens, and it does it seamlessly. I don't even need to know it's happening. I just swipe my credit card, and then $10 goes into the open market and says, I need to buy $10 worth of tokens. Now, if that token's a tenth of a penny, 10 cents, $1, or $10 per token, it doesn't matter to me. I'll get a tenth of a token as long as I get my platform. That's all I cared about. I paid $10, I got the platform. And so if that $10 buys 1,000 coins, 100 coins, 10 coins, it's no difference to me. It's the first time ever that you have that kind of buy-side pressure coming into the market where the price is irrelevant. It's the dollar amount that has to go into the market that's relevant. And so I look at it and say, imagine with Amazon.com, if Jeff Bezos, every time I bought something on Amazon, if Jeff Bezos required me to go buy Amazon stock and then use the stock to pay for my, new shoes that I bought on Amazon. They can't do that in a Web 2 environment, in a traditional market. That is exactly what we can do in a Web 3 environment. And we're setting up the wallet so eventually the user, right when they swipe their card, it automatically will send their money into the open market to buy those tokens.
That's what we were talking about when I was putting together this call, right? You suggested I change the wording to owns the infrastructure. And I think that when I think about, this new Grand Theft Auto game, is how many kids and sometimes grown adults get on their games and they're putting in their credit card details to play the game at a level they want to experience the game, buy new cars, buy new skins, or whatever they do. And
Sure.
here's the owners in the blockchain of the nodes realizing that that credit card transaction is buying tokens in their asset. That you don't get much more passive than that when someone else is to me, this is the exciting space we get to consider being in. Tony, before I just see if there's any other questions, I always love asking you because your world moves so fast and I know some of the conversations you're in right now. Is there anything you can share with us that is really exciting, that you're excited about and your friends are in this space are excited about, that is happening in the very near future, day by day, that makes this project super exciting for you?
I mean, there's every day things are coming across my plate that gets me more excited. Keen Tech, they're Zoom's largest vendor in the world. And them and their partners, they've got 5,000 B2B sales reps, business to business sales reps, and they want to take Zoom out of the primary spot for video conferencing solution, and they want to move R-Link in to the primary spot for the video conference solution. And so again, we'll have to scale up to be ready for that kind of influx of clients. But I mean, they've brought millions of customers to Zoom, and I believe with 1 million users, with that kind of revenue coming in consistently on a monthly basis, I can't imagine we couldn't defend, 5+ cents, maybe even up to 10 cents, not including some kind of potential crypto bump from speculative investors that come into the coin. But, we've got, you mentioned Napoleon Hill. So the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, I'm supposed to meet him, Dave Meltzer, either in Nashville. Yeah, so I did a call with Dave the other day. He loves the platform, loves what we're doing, wants to be a part of it. So I'm supposed to meet him. He's all over the world right now, but I'm meeting him either in, I think, Nashville, Atlanta, or Orlando, depending on my times and maybe if he's available. We're going to meet him and just grab lunch or a dinner and get him involved in what we're doing. And so there's, I live near Jake Paul here in Dorado, Puerto Rico. I've been over to his house and he's been over to Wright's house and hung out with us and loves the platform, loves the program. I mean, again, because we're in beta, because we're not ready to just add millions of clients, like that, we'll launch the fully free version once we scale up. We're going to be very, very competitive. And I think it'll be a big problem for Zoom. But somebody like Jake Paul, one tweet from a guy like that, the guy's got billions of views, and his YouTube videos and stuff. So there's just so many influential people, extremely successful people, several billionaires that are very excited about our project. And so the good news, I think, for us that are part of the project is, if any one of these people gets on board and hits their home run, we all win. But the fun thing to think about is, what if all 50 of these amazing individuals hit their home runs, and who knows where we could be. And we have other projects. I bought the code for if this is the Zoom killer, I bought code for what I would call the TikTok killer. It's called Pixa. And so this is it'd be like a social selling app where, you can sell things, and, you got all kinds of stuff going on. If there's the gas.
Jake Paul's going to love it.
Yeah. So let's say they're selling, some kind of coffee or something, you can click, it's in beta, but imagine you'd see their coffee for sale, and you could just go to your wallet, your crypto wallet, and buy the coffee, and it would send them their tokens, and then you're checked out. And so, the TikTok killer, I think, is going to be very easy, because the question becomes, do you want all your data going to China? That's where TikTok's taking it and stealing all your data, and it's all in China. Or do you want to own and monetize your own data? And I think the answer to that question is going to be pretty simple. Everybody's going to want to own and monetize their own data. And so it'll live on the same chain. So as revenue from that platform comes in, all of it's going to go into the buy side pressure of the token. Now, if you had to put a market cap on Zoom's, it's easy. It's a publicly traded company, 22 to 25 billion, depending on the stock price of the day. TikTok, the value estimate of a market cap, I've seen anywhere from 200 billion to 400 billion with a market cap on something like that. So much more revenue in that space than even the video conferencing space. And so again, I think the sky's the limit for the amount of communication blockchain projects we can bring onto the Rally chain. This is just the first mover. I certainly believe that there's other projects that all of us will have much more success from a wealth building standpoint than video conferencing. This is just an easy, low hanging fruit project to launch to the world, but we have much more lucrative projects that will layer onto this chain. And again, everyone that's involved in the chain, every node owner on the chain is going to benefit from any and every one of those projects as they come to fruition.
Yeah. And I mean, what I love the most about you in this space is like, there's no hype. It's like, buy it, don't buy it. It's happening with or without you. Do your thing, read the white paper, do your research. I'm massive on, I'm getting a little intolerant of people saying, oh, but what if it's a Ponzi? And I'm like, so do your research, make sure it's not, cool. In saying that though, I always like to, hit home with a sense of urgency, because I think there's nothing worse on this planet. And I heard your story straight up when I first came into this space of, I didn't call to mask back and I missed out first round. And I'm like, so for me, I want people to know on this call is, yes, go do your research. Yes, go read the white paper, ask heaps of questions. That's super important. But you also don't have forever to get in on this. I'm the same as you, Tony. I bought my first whole bunch of R-Link nodes at 2,500. They're now, what did you say? Nearly $6,000. There is a limited supply. There's a limited supply of tokens. That's why, this is way better than cash, because it can't be inflated. So for me, I'm like, how fast do you think this is going to move? Like, how fast before, it's like, sorry guys, no more nodes. You missed out.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it really, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't control the market or anything like that. But what I can say is if a few of these people start hitting home runs as we come out of beta and we start adding millions of users onto this platform and driving hundreds of millions or billions of dollars through the token, I'm not saying there won't be opportunity, but certainly, I can buy Tesla stock today. I can buy Amazon stock today. I would have rather have bought it in the 90s, like it's just kind of common sense. If I can get in early before the masses have it hit, which you talked about earlier on the video conference, you want to get early before the masses adopt it. And that's really the upside that all of us have here today is we're early. Peter was asking about, his construction company that uses Teams. It depends on what they use. We are planning, our roadmap does create a competitor to Teams as well. There's certain bells and whistles that we don't have that Teams does, but we're building that. It's probably, phase 3 or 4, because that's a little stickier customer, the big enterprise Teams customer versus the Zoom customer, which Zoom is over 50% of the market. And so again, we're not necessarily attacking a Teams user. Now, I have people that have left Teams and come to us because their needs weren't that tied into Teams, and they could do that. I've had others where we're like, hey, listen, we'll circle back to you guys in 6 months when we're ready to rock. But I think the runway here, we're looking to really come into our own by the fall in the US, which will be September, October. And as we get into the winter and first quarter of next year, we want to be full force, bringing in as many clients as we can, as fast as we can. And so it is not this, 5-year, 10-year journey. This is like, hey, 8 to 12 months, we're off and running. Like timing is really good for us right now. Everything's lining up. Our devs, we just hired 4 more devs, full-time devs into this project. And so we're moving as fast as we can. And I do think it will come out of nowhere. Like one of these folks that comes online and puts out the right tweet or the right YouTube video or whatever, and it starts to catch some viral growth, we won't be able to stop it, which that's a great thing. But again, if you're not involved prior to that happening, certainly there could be that fear of loss that I had to deal with the Gala Games project, and me being on the sidelines watching friends of mine make 40 million, 50 million, $4.3 billion, and just watching it happen versus playing in the game and participating while it happened.
Yeah. And look, I'll wrap up with what I hear you say all the time is the faster technology moves. And, I don't think we have to wait that long. I had somebody on the phone yesterday saying, this is a long-term investment. I'm going to go back and do this while I wait. And I'm like, I don't think you have long to wait. I really don't think you have long to wait. Given where we're at in technology right now, this is perfectly timed with what is happening with Bitcoin, perfectly timed with what's happening in American politics. I think that the recipe is perfect and correct here. And when I look at, the rally token price, well, yesterday when I checked, it was 0.0009, like a tenth of an Aussie cent here, tiny. You could buy millions of tokens for such a little amount of money right now that could change your whole existence. So I like saying to people, look, jump on a call with someone in this space and find a way to get involved, whether it's my daughter putting $16 worth of recycled cans into this space, every week, whether it's putting hundreds of thousands of dollars, whether it's buying software nodes. There's only 100,000 of them available. There's a limited supply of tokens. So, then we're going to have to beg people to sell them to us at some point. But I think it's a matter of asking the questions and, getting involved and having a look at this. But Tony, if there's anything else you want to say before we jump off, I appreciate your time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like I said, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what the market will or won't do. What I can tell you is my focus is to build another billion-dollar company. And I've had a lot of success in doing that. And I don't say that to impress people. The difference between building a multi-million-dollar business and a billion-dollar business had nothing to do with work at all. I couldn't have worked harder building my accounting firm than I did building my restaurant delivery service. I worked as hard as I could. I don't really burn out, but I built a multi-million-dollar restaurant delivery business. To build a multi-billion-dollar accounting firm, it was the same amount of work. Had nothing to do with putting in more hours or putting in more time or working smarter and not harder. I was always working smart. I was creating systems. I was building systems that would work for me versus me working for the system. I was building big businesses that I could walk away from, and they still ran and actually grew after I stepped back. So it comes down to, I think, Ange, you said it earlier, it's solving that big problem. A billion-dollar company, and the difference between a billion-dollar company and a trillion-dollar company is the trillion-dollar company is solving a bigger problem. And sometimes those problems are not surface level problems. And what I mean by that is, I used to have a problem when I was a kid. If my mom dropped me off to play soccer with my friends or whatever, and then it started pouring down rain on us and we needed to leave early, and we were nowhere near anybody's house, and we were nowhere near a payphone, because there was no such thing as these when I was a kid. There was no cell phones. So you would start jogging to the nearest payphone. And again, that was life. This didn't exist. So you didn't know it was solving a problem. But let me tell you something. If you have an emergency and you need somebody to come pick you up, it's really nice to have this on you at all times. And so the smartphone solved the problem that to find out what everyone was doing in high school, like where the parties were going to be, what everybody was doing. We would drive around. We called it the L in Pratt, Kansas. It was this like this two highways. We would go down First Street and then Main Street. And there was a gas station we would loop around on Main Street and come back up, and we'd go on First Street and loop around Sonic, which is like a drive-in fast food place. And we'd loop around there, and people would pull out and park in Sonic, and you'd go, hey, what are you doing? Where are you guys going? What's happening tonight? And that's how you figured out what was going on Friday night, Saturday night. Now you just text your buddies. You get on, hey, what are you guys doing tonight? Hey, where's everybody going? So that's a massive solution to a problem that no one knew they really had, but it's just so easy, so much more convenient now that problem's been solved. And so blockchain is going to solve major problems, making the world bankable, eliminating voter fraud, eliminating rare diseases from the planet. There'll be no such thing as a rare disease because all the health data, the AI would go, that's not a rare disease. We have 4,312 people in the database that have that exact same diagnosis. And actually 3,912 started this treatment procedure and have had amazing success. AI is recommending that you get with your current provider, your care provider, and share this data and information with them and see if they'll start you on that treatment procedure. So that is so valuable, like off the charts valuable. And so we're at the forefront of bringing that type of technology to the world. And so, I think each and every one of us is at the right place at the right time. And I've put everything I've got into this because these problems that we're going to be solving through this technology is much larger than any problem pretty much as the world has ever solved previously. You're talking about 1.3 quadrillion in movement. And so can we position ourselves in the middle of that? And if by accident, if you can position yourself in the right area at the right time, it's going to be very, very good for you, your family, maybe for generations to come.
Again, I think Henry Ford would be really proud. I love his quote that if I had have asked the people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Mm-hmm. And I think the people that will win in this game of life right now are the people that can future forecast problems that the status quo aren't even looking for. And like you said, I was just laughing at Lisa because we were Puerto Rico buddies. And I was like, man, we were trying to use a physical map to navigate Lisa around that island. And then when we got Siri hooked up and it started talking to her and preempting the turns, it's like when we had our physical book map back in the day, before GPS, we didn't even know how good it could be.
Exactly. So
I think about like Lisa had this moment of like, oh, thank you, Siri. The Siri gods prevailed. And we got where we needed to be with so much more ease and flow and less stress. So you're right, Tony. I don't even think unless you're like in that space of chill and you're meditating about the world and what's going on right now, I don't even think you're seeing the problems that we're about to fix with blockchain and
agreed.
Technology.
I think our kids and grandkids are going to look at us and go, wait. You guys let people own your data? Like,
that's my daughter.
They knew your address. They knew your phone number. They knew what you searched for on the internet. Like, what? Like, why would you ever do that? Like, why were you guys so stupid?
My daughter saying to me, like, why did you have to stand in a box on the street to make a phone call?
Yeah.
She was like, it's going to be that stupid. Couple of quick questions. Do we know how many R-Link nodes have been sold to date?
I don't have the exact number. I can find out. Somewhere in the 20 to 30,000 range is
cool.
is out. Yeah, it's, I think, closing in on 30,000.
And why has Rally decided to restrict the amount of nodes sold to 100,000, say, for instance?
We don't need much more computer power to run our meetings on chain. So I think it just comes down to use, right? Like, why have 1 million nodes if you could only use 100,000? You know what I mean? Like, for us, it's about utility. It's about computer power and the ability to host meetings all throughout the world and host them on blockchain. And so, could that change down the road? Yeah. The community could vote if needed. If we were like, hey, we need 200,000 nodes because so many users, so many meetings, newer technology. We're doing hologram meetings now through the R-Link platform. And instead of just a 2D deal, it's like a 3D deal, like it's a hologram and I'm standing in your living room having this conversation. So, at the end of the day, I think the beauty of something like blockchain is the community steers the ship. And the community voted that hey, we'll do 100,000 nodes. And if something changes and the community needs more nodes, the community can vote and go, yeah, we need double the node count. But for now, I don't think our devs or any of us believe we need more than that. And so as long as it meets the utility need, that's the number. But again, if technology changes, if things changes, if we need more, the community will have another vote.
I love it. I love it. Hey, thanks again for your time. Super excited to keep hearing updates from you guys. Jump in, get the emails from the R-Link space, talk to people, link in. Any questions, please reach out to me or someone else that might be on this call. We're always willing to answer your questions. And Tony, when you go to Nashville, it's one of my new favorite places on the planet. Make sure you go to the listening room. It's a really cool songwriters space that's pretty underground, and the songwriters of some of the world's most famous songs get up on stage and explain their stories. It's pretty cool.
I'll see what I can do. Yeah, I love Nashville. I'm a fan of Atlanta and Orlando as well. So any of those three, wherever I end up, I'll be fine with. So, but thanks everybody for sharing your time with us. I'll stop the recording and get it out to you, Ange, and then it'll process it. It might take half an hour or so to process, but once it does, everyone will be able to watch.